Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and we have another exciting edition of Core Call with Ronnie Nunn. Ronnie, glad to have you back on the show. How's the whistle blowing these days?
Well, it's some tough plays I know that we have from the fans today. But, I know it's a tough job for the guys, but they still have to continue to work hard. Every day you go out, you got to work hard at making yourself as accurate as you can be.
Absolutely. Well, we have our first play, which is the Bulls versus the Raptors, and Kirk Hinrich fumbles the ball. And so we're a little bit concerned because did they miss this call? Marvin wants to know whether or not this should have been a double dribble call.
Well, Marvin is correct. Technically, this is a double dribble play, and the reason is that the coach over there, Dwayne Casey, recognizes it as double dribble because when Hinrich does a crossover, he actually loses that ball on the crossover, and he puts two hands to touch the ball, and then he pushes it down with the right hand. The fact that two hands touched the top of it and the ball went down is the double dribble that Casey is looking for, and he is correct. Now, the only question on that play is, and we can't confirm, is if Lowry got a piece of the ball on that crossover, or maybe touched the arm marginally enough to where Hinrich had to really regroup to try to get to the ball either through a dribble or through a capture. So he ends up getting a dribble in, and then he captures the ball. And, of course, Casey probably believes that Lowry didn't touch it. And if he didn't touch it, that would be a double dribble. So there's a good point there to Casey's histrionics for a moment.
So the bottom line is if I go to pass the ball with both hands and it squirts out, I can run it down. But because there's a downward motion after my two hands touch the ball, that is the double dribble.
Yes, that is the double dribble because two hands were on that ball upon trying to get hold of it.
Let's see how our next play unfolds because we have the Rockets versus the Lakers with a circus shot by Jody Meeks. And so we had a couple questions by Jordan who wants to know if it's legal to go over the backboard and was that even really a foul by Harden?
I saw this play many years ago in a game I had with Boston and Cleveland. Larry Bird had a very similar shot and it went in. It was phenomenal. And of course, we wiped it out. Now, let me just make sure everybody knows the tops, the sides, and the bottoms are all legal for a basketball to touch in our game. The backboard, all the tops, the sides, and the bottom is legal. Now, the good news here for Meeks is he's able to shoot that ball outside of an imaginary tunnel. We have an imaginary cylinder that goes above the basket. We also have an imaginary tunnel that goes behind the basket. And if you shoot a shot from behind the basket that goes through that imaginary tunnel, that would not be considered a shot. And Jody shoots that shot outside of that tunnel, and therefore he has a marketable shot if it goes in for a score, and it does.
And the bottom line is it can touch the top of the backboard, it can roll on top of the backboard. I think it's so long as it does not hit the black part of the stanchion or the shot clock, everything's in bounds.
Everything's in bounds. And it doesn't touch any of the, you mentioned the stanchion or the extensions that hold the backboard up. Any of those behind the basket, you cannot do. So, but it touched, it rolled, it fell in, all legal, a hell of a shot and a hell of a play. And
I do think that in the 80s, you couldn't shoot over the backboard like that anyway. You might recall the very famous Larry Bird shot, I think in an all-star game where he shoots it over the backboard. Everyone cheers, but then you can quickly see the referee waving it off because he knows that back then at least you couldn't shoot the ball over the backboard, right?
Yeah, not at that time, but today we've made a very solid distinction on where that launch can come from. Anything that is outside that tunnel and gets to the board or on top of it or rolls over, not a problem at all. But if it's shot or passed within the tunnel and it goes through that tunnel, that you can't have.
Well, great stuff. Let's move on to another block charge we have coming up with the Rockets and the Wizards. And we have a question from Steve who wants to know, was this a good call in the open court as John Wall bears down on Jeremy Lin?
We've seen here in talking today, there have been some block charge plays. And what happens here is this is a really tight, tough play. And I'm going to give a credit to the official. And if we do this in slow motion, you will see that the defender steps at the same time that the offensive player launches. but I think he does it just a tad earlier prior to the launch. I think Wall gets into position just prior to the launch upward, and that makes a distinctive perception of a look. It's not worth the technicality at that time. The space of going up when a guy is already there is an illusion. And I understand the offensive foul. It's that tight that I could live with that. But usually when both players come to the position at the same time, it's usually and should be a block, because remember, you didn't beat the player to the spot.
Well, let's move on to our next call, which is Stephen Curry getting a block charge on a cold drive when the Heat took on the Warriors. And there's a couple things going on here, Ronnie, that we saw. So first of all, talk about the actual notion of the block or the charge. Was that a right call?
The position of Curry on the play is, and I like what he decides. He decides that on this drive that he's going to take a stand. A very smart defensive posture by him, and a lot of defending guards should think about this on fast breaks. You got to take a stand at some point when you believe you got the line or the path of where this guy is going, and you got to take that shot. He does. The problem is he now is really not squared, and his shoulder and his back leg is the problem. So if there were contact, then absolutely a blocking foul, as the official had probably how the official saw it. But what the official missed was when Cole wanted to get this step through, he took the ball to clear to get to that side of Curry, and in doing that, his elbow catches Curry's head, and that's where the trump is in that card on that play, which means that play now is immediately an offensive foul, and that has to be responded to as an offensive foul.
I agree. I thought that when you do that, it's not really a basketball play. In fact, it's kind of dangerous when you start swinging that elbow like that. And the problem there is that he is now taking what we practice as a fundamental rip-through, but the rip-through is supposed to be elbows below the ball. And he gets that elbow up perpendicular to that ball easily, and then that's when you get into trouble. And it's dangerous because you want to be able to, as a defender, take a charge and not think that you're going to get your nose broken or your teeth knocked out. The way they're doing that. And I think that's a great call by Pablo to recommend that play to us, because it's interesting when you have two different things here, a block and then the offensive charge on the upper part of it.
Yeah, it's almost a simultaneous play, and even though one may follow just a little bit of the other, the most obvious always takes precedent. And I think your point about rip-throughs are very, very good. I like the term when they instituted it. I was not with the league at the time, but that is a great situation because there was a lot of talk about rip-throughs. And I think your point about a high rip-through, which is what occurred here, can be very costly to the player. In fact, sometimes this play can be considered an ejectionable play. This could be a flagrant foul penalty too, depending on the situation. I don't think it is that, but it certainly could have been a flagrant foul one. Mm-hmm. So anytime you're up around the neck area on a swing through, rip through, clearing a space, you are highly suspect of getting a strong penalty.
Well, let's move on to our last play, which was suggested by me. I'm surprised no one else really suggested it on Twitter. Maybe they were all busy. But the Heat and the Mavericks met up in a rematch of their exciting finals from a few years ago. And this was a frustrating call for me to watch because Sean Marion gets the basket, and our old friend Shane Battier tries to take a charge, something he does several times a game, and they ended up giving it to him. Ronnie, what do you think about this call?
Well, this is, obviously our theme today. We've got some block charges and some really good ones. The problem is the referee who's on the baseline is really watching Marion too much. And where he launches, now he goes to find where the defender is, and the defender looks legal, which is Battier. But if you take a baseline view where the official should be looking, as soon as that drive starts, he doesn't need to look at anything but who's coming to weak side defend this drive. And if he did that, he would see, and a baseline view will confirm for us, how Battier takes his body and moves it laterally. So by the time Marion comes down, this big space that occurs, sure, it looks like when you catch Battier that he was legal, but he was never legal. He was moving all the time while the launch had already occurred on the driving player. And all of a sudden, when the contact occurs, yeah, it looks like Battier's legal, but he was illegal all the way through the sequence.
Yeah, it was frustrating to watch because there wasn't even that much contact. You can't normally when you see a real contact, they both go to the ground and it's a big thing. And I'm always concerned when I see players who are up in the air have a defender slide underneath them, especially a guy like Marion who can still get off the floor a little bit.
You cannot get block charges if you don't cast your eyes. There's an old Darryl Garrettson expression: cast your eyes on the defense. And I would say today, immediately pick up the defense, because they're the people that can hurt you. You know, in the game of basketball, as a referee, the adversary in your game is not team A and team B, it's the plays. And you don't want the plays to beat you. You want to win your game by making sure you got the plays in hand. And that's a time when he probably got focused so much on the drive, he didn't pick up where the defender was. And it's a pretty simple play had he done that.
Well, I know that after watching these 5 plays and commenting on them that we have won those plays. We beat them today. So I'm glad that we got a chance to take it. And thanks to all the fans. Don't forget, if you tweet us with the court call hashtag, we will go through these plays and most likely pick yours. So don't forget to get on Twitter when you see a call that you want us to question. So, Ronnie, terrific stuff with these plays and the block charges today.
Yeah, there's some tough block charges, but there are learnable plays for the defenders on how to deal with it, and there are certainly learnable and trainable plays for the officials to keep working on it. Once you get at ease on the defender, you are in trouble. Stay with the defender. Refereeing has to do with watching off the ball or watching the defender, because 90% of the fouls are by the defender. So it's a different way to really shine up your work.
Terrific. Well, great insight. And don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in?
I'm in, Coach. Another great segment with you.